Another year wasting away in that basement lab? Patricia Morrison's voice carried across the hospital's elegant ballroom, making several heads turn. Really, Emma, when are you going to start practicing real medicine? I smoothed my simple black dress, the one my mother-in-law had once dismissed as too academic, and maintained my composure. The annual St. Mary's Hospital fundraising gala had become an exercise in restraint since I married into the Morrison medical dynasty 5 years ago. My research is medicine, Patricia, I replied calmly. The work we're doing on autoimmune disorders is a waste of hospital resources, she cut in, diamond bracelet catching the light as she gestured dismissively. How many patients have you actually treated this year? How many lives have you actually saved? If she only knew about the clinical trials we completed last month, about the results that would be announced tomorrow at the Nobel Committee's press conference in Stockholm. Leave her alone, mother, my husband Michael interrupted, though his voice wavered slightly. The Morrisons had that effect on people, even their own son. 3 generations of celebrated surgeons had taught them how to weaponize disappointment. We're just concerned, Richard Morrison, my father-in-law, joined us. His bow tie probably cost more than a month's salary for my research assistants. Emma's brilliant, she graduated top of her class at Johns Hopkins. She could be running the surgical department by now, instead of hiding in a laboratory. I thought about the sealed envelope in my office safe, the one containing tomorrow's announcement that would shake the medical world. 5 years of research, hundreds of failed experiments, and finally, a breakthrough that would change how we treat autoimmune diseases forever. Sometimes the most important medical advances happen in laboratories, I said quietly, not operating rooms. Advances? Patricia scoffed. Like that failed trial last year. How much donor money did that waste? That failed trial had been a carefully orchestrated deception. We needed to protect our research until the patents were secured, until we were sure the treatment was safe. The Morrison family's hunger for quick results and publicity would have rushed things, potentially putting patients at risk. Speaking of donor money, Richard interjected, the board is reviewing research funding allocations next week. Given your limited results, perhaps it's time to consider a different direction. And there it was. The real reason for this public humiliation. The Morrisons didn't just want me in surgery, they wanted my lab's funding and space for their new elective surgery center. I appreciate your concern, I said, taking a sip of champagne, but our current projects are fully funded through external grants. External grants? Patricia's perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose. From whom? Every major medical foundation in the country is on our board. I smiled, thinking of the private funding that had kept our research going when the Morrisons tried to shut us down. There are other sources of research funding, Patricia. Not everyone needs their name on a hospital wing. Michael shifted uncomfortably beside me. He knew some of the truth. He was one of only 3 people who did. We kept the breakthrough secret for months, watching and waiting for the perfect moment. Well, Richard's voice had a dangerous edge. As chief of surgery, I might need to review your lab space allocation. The new surgical center needs that basement level. I thought about my meeting last week with the Nobel Committee, how they'd verified every detail of our research, how they'd been stunned by the success rates in our clinical trials. Everything in the lab is exactly where it needs to be, I replied. But thank you for your interest in our work. Patricia's hand gripped my arm, her manicured nails digging slightly. Don't be difficult, dear. The Morrison Surgical Center will help far more patients than your little experiments ever could. The Morrison Surgical Center, their planned temple to profitable elective procedures, built on the ashes of my research lab. If they only knew what we'd achieved in that basement. Time will tell, I said softly, checking my watch. Now if you'll excuse me, I have an early conference call tomorrow. With other researchers. Patricia's laugh was like breaking crystal, comparing notes on failed experiments. Something like that. I kissed Michael's cheek, ignoring Patricia's disapproving glare at this public display of affection. Good night, everyone. Lovely gala as always. As I walked to my car, Dr. Sanders, the hospital's senior researcher, fell into step beside me. They still don't know, do they? He asked quietly. He was one of the few who understood what we'd accomplished. They'll find out tomorrow, I replied, unlocking my Tesla. Bought with the advance from our pharmaceutical patent. Not Morrison money, along with everyone else. In my lab that night, I reviewed everything one final time. 5 years of research data, clinical trials conducted quietly at partner hospitals, patients whose lives have been transformed by our treatment. The Morrisons thought I'd spent those years playing with test tubes. Instead, I developed a cure that would revolutionize medicine. My phone buzzed. A message from Dr. Zhang at the WHO. Final review complete. Press packages ready. You're sure about tomorrow's announcement? I thought about Patricia's mocking laugh, Richard's thinly veiled threats, the years of watching them prioritize profit over patient care. I'm sure, I typed back. Everything's ready. The next message was from Dr. Sarah Chen, my research partner who was already in Stockholm. Auditoriums prepared. Media's assembled. They have no idea what's coming. I smiled, remembering Richard's dismissal of our little experiments. He had no idea that tomorrow's announcement would make his surgical center look like a medieval practice. Looking at the lab equipment that had become my second home, I thought about the day Richard Morrison had first shown me this basement space. "You can play scientist down here," he'd said condescendingly, "as long as you don't interfere with real medical work upstairs." Well, I'd done more than play scientist. I'd changed the future of medicine. And tomorrow, the Morrison family would learn that some doctors save lives not by wielding scalpels, but by quietly revolutionizing medical science itself. The St. Mary's Hospital conference room buzzed with nervous energy at 8:45 a.m. The entire medical staff had been summoned for an urgent announcement, something about a live broadcast from Stockholm. In the front row, Patricia Morrison whispered furiously to her husband. "What's this about, Richard? Why wasn't the board informed?" Richard Morrison's face was tight with barely controlled anger. "I don't know, but if this interrupts surgical schedules." "Good morning, everyone." I walked in wearing my lab coat rather than surgical scrubs. "Thank you for joining us on such short notice." "Dr. Chen." Richard's voice carried genuine surprise. "What is the meaning of this? I have 3 surgeries scheduled." "They've been covered," I interrupted smoothly. "Dr. Williams will handle your procedures today. This announcement takes priority." The massive screen behind me flickered to life, showing the grand hall of the Karolinska Institute in Stockholm. The Nobel Committee members were seated at their traditional table, cameras flashing. "What's going on?" Patricia demanded, but her voice held a note of uncertainty I'd never heard before. "Please everyone take your seats," I said calmly. "The announcement is about to begin." The committee chairman's voice filled the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Today, we announce the Nobel Prize in Medicine or Physiology for groundbreaking work in autoimmune disease treatment." Patricia's perfectly manicured hand gripped Richard's arm as my name appeared on the screen, along with details of our research for the development of targeted immune system reprogramming, a revolutionary treatment that effectively cures multiple autoimmune conditions. The room erupted in gasps and whispers. Richard's face had gone from red to white. On screen, Dr. Sarah Chen, my research partner, was already at the podium in Stockholm. "This breakthrough," she was saying, "represents 5 years of dedicated research. Using a novel approach to cellular reprogramming, we've developed a treatment that success rate exceeds 94% in clinical trials." "Impossible," Richard whispered. "The trials failed last year." "The public trials failed," I corrected him gently. "The real trials conducted at partner hospitals worldwide succeeded beyond our highest expectations." The presentation continued, showing before and after scans, patient testimonials, peer reviews from the world's top medical journals. With each slide, the Morrison family's empire of traditional treatments became more obsolete. "Your research budget," Patricia managed, her voice shaking. "The failed experiments were a cover," I confirmed. "We needed to protect our work until it was ready, until it was safe. Unlike some, we prioritize patient safety over quick profits." Dr. Williams, the chief of internal medicine, stood up. "The hospital board will need to review this immediately. This changes everything about how we treat autoimmune conditions." "The patents and treatment protocols have already been secured," I explained. "And yes, St. Mary's will be one of the primary treatment centers, though perhaps not in a basement lab." The screens showed the global impact projections, millions of patients who could now be cured rather than merely treated. The pharmaceutical partnership details appeared next: billions in research funding, licensing agreements, and most importantly, provisions ensuring the treatment would be accessible to all patients, not just the wealthy. You went around us, Richard finally found his voice. Use our hospital's resources. Actually, I cut in. We used private funding. Every piece of equipment, every trial, every research hour was paid for through independent grants. The only resource we used was space, that basement lab you were so eager to turn into a surgical center. The room had filled with more staff, nurses, technicians, administrators, all watching their hospital become the center of medical history. Patricia's face shifted from shock to calculation. Well, she said, attempting to regain control, naturally, as a Morrison family hospital, will want to be at the forefront of implementing this treatment. Street Marys will certainly be involved, I agreed, though its name might be changing. The WHO has suggested naming the treatment center after Dr. Helen Chen, my mother. Your mother? Patricia's voice rose an octave. The Chinese immigrant who worked as a lab technician. The brilliant researcher who inspired my work, I corrected firmly, who taught me that true medicine isn't about prestige or profit, it's about helping people. The next few hours were chaos. International media descended on the hospital, medical journals requested interviews, and through it all, the Morrisons watched their surgical empire become secondary to the revolutionary treatment they dismissed as playing with test tubes. 6 months later, I stood in the newly renovated Chen Medical Research Center, formerly the basement lab. The space now occupied 3 floors with state-of-the-art equipment and a team of dedicated researchers. Michael found me there, reviewing data from our latest trials. Our marriage had survived the revelation, though family dinners were considerably quieter now. Moms were decorating their house, he reported with a slight smile. Apparently having a Nobel laureate for a daughter-in-law requires a more intellectual aesthetic. I laughed, looking at the framed photos on my wall, not of surgeries or hospital wings, but of patients who'd been cured. How's your father handling the change? Still adjusting to the fact that his surgical center's been repurposed as a research facility. Though he did finally read your paper, actually seemed impressed. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from researchers worldwide. Building on our breakthrough to develop new treatments, Patricia had stopped offering advice about real medicine, though she still occasionally suggested I dress more appropriately for a Nobel laureate. Dr. Sarah Chen called from our new lab in Singapore. Phase 2 trials showing even better results. The cellular regeneration rates are unprecedented. I smiled, thinking of all those gala dinners where they'd mocked my dedication to research. Send me the data. Let's see if we can improve those numbers even further.